Chief, you ran through the media. The media has been pointed lately as a means to probably attack the work that you do. How do you feel about that? And it's actually, I mean, how do you feel about it?
So you're exactly right. The Border Patrol, DHS, CBP have had an awful lot of scrutiny over really not just the last few months, but really the last couple of years. We continue to do a very important mission out there, and so Border Patrol agents and our professional staff are doing a tremendous job. We're under-resourced. We don't have enough agents, enough personnel. We don't have enough resources. Yet we continue to go out there each and every day to perform what we call a very important mission. We have got a border security mission, and then of course we've got this humanitarian crisis that we're dealing with on a daily basis. Does it get challenging when you do see some negative things in the media? Yes. But we're very resilient as an organization, and we're going to continue to stay focused on that frontline mission.
Chief, hi, Vanessa Roy from Ken's Fire out of San Antonio. Can we talk about the processing centers right now and how they're overcrowded? Is there any plans to alleviate that?
Yeah, exactly. We do have some of our facilities that have exceeded capacity. Here in this sector, we've been very fortunate that we're able to process individuals relatively quickly, and we can get them out of the facilities that have some overcrowded conditions, but they're not equipped to hold people long term. And so what we have done is we've set up some temporary shelters, tents, in our Eagle Pass station, which is one of our newer stations, and that's going to allow us to hold probably about 250 more people than we have in custody right now. So that will alleviate some of the overcrowding, and then we're going to try and do a better job of processing people just a little bit quicker, and then turning them over to the other agencies. Border Patrol is not the sole source of detention. We are processing centers. We're not detention centers. And so when we have to hold somebody longer than 24, 48, or 72 hours, it really does tax us. And so our ability to transfer them, if they're unaccompanied children, to Health and Human Services, or if they're family units, to ICE, ERO, really, or single adults, really benefits us when we have those, they have the capacity to absorb some of those overcrowded individuals.
And we've heard that, so there's some single males in some of the processing centers that have been there for over 30 days. Is that just a rumor going around? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, no, we do have people that have been in our custody longer than we would like to see them in our custody. Unfortunately, across the nation, we are all fighting for the same beds. We work with our judicial partners, the Marshal Service. We work with ICRO to be able to place these individuals at the first available bed that comes open. But we are trying to make sure that we have accommodations so we don't find ourselves placing somebody in conditions that really nobody should be in longer and for a long period of time. And so we have built or installing showers in most of our facilities. We transport people to other facilities. We try and give them a change in their diet so we can ensure that some of the scrutiny that has gone on isn't placed in this sector unduly.
Go ahead.
You mentioned during your speech, the comments, sorry, Bill Hennigan with Time Magazine. You mentioned during your comments that your agents aren't trained to deal with, women and children. Do you think perhaps that the training is outdated, and that because of this ongoing threat, and it's an annual thing, that it should now encompass a more humanitarian side, I guess, for lack of a better term?
No, that's a great question. So what has happened at our academy in Artesia, New Mexico is we've expanded our training to a 117-day training cycle, and it's a scenario-based training. And so the agents that are going through our academy now are trained much differently than they were probably 5 and 10 years ago. I will tell you that we have ongoing advanced training that occurs, and so from making sure that we have enough emergency medical technicians out there to ensuring that we understand that the population we're dealing with is much different. I talk about family units and unaccompanied children. Typically, when I started 28 years ago, it was adult males and females from Mexico. And so you certainly have to deal with that population just a little bit differently. And then we have to make sure our facilities are set up to be able to coordinate and accommodate the needs of those individuals. So we have made some adjustments, and we're going to continue to refine those adjustments to make sure that we're adequately prepared to deal with those population groups that we're experiencing right now.
And that takes funding though, right? And that's the biggest hurdle.
Yeah, so it has been the biggest hurdle because we've been taking operational funds and utilizing them for the humanitarian crisis with the supplemental bill, the $4.6 billion that was passed. That is going to alleviate some of the strain on our resources and be able to apply those operational resources to the front lines of that border security mission, and then augment what we're doing right now with the humanitarian crisis. We've got medical contractors coming into place. We're expanding our transportation contract, and then we're retrofitting our facilities to make sure that we can manage the populations that we're experiencing now.
So when you mentioned some of the new things that you're going to be able to do with the funding, those are the sort of things that you're referring to, installation of these showers, the medical contractors.
Yeah, we started this several months ago, and now we're going to be able to finalize all of those efforts to make sure that we have them in place for from here on out.
Chief Ortiz, Karen Gleason with the Del Rio News Herald. I know that one of the other things you mentioned in your discussion was the increased stress on your agents, the long hours that they're putting in, the unfamiliar duties that they're being subjected to. What resources are, if any, are being made available to those agents to deal maybe with some of those stressors?
Yeah, that's a tremendous, great question. So, resiliency is something that we talk about quite often. Gracie Medina, who's in charge of my division chief over my mission readiness department, she oversees a whole group of agents that are focused on peer support, employment issues, to make sure that our employees know that they have resources available to them if they find themselves in a stressful environment or overstressed. And so we continually message not just counseling services that are available, but certainly, the morale and the welfare of our workforce. I talk about battle fatigue quite often because I spent 2 years in Afghanistan. I understand the strain of working in this type of environment that it can place on an individual or an organization. And so we're very mindful and conscious of that. And so we constantly message, one, that they've got the support not just of the leadership, but also of the community, and then we're out there as often as we can to make sure that we monitor in case we do see an instance where we perhaps have a problematic issue that we need to address.
Chief. Kat Rowalt, Christian Reporter News. Are the people that are coming in, are they being able to medically check them? I know the whole deal is moving people as quickly as possible, but are we really getting a feel of, are they healthy, the individuals that are coming in, and if not, what's being done?
Yes, certainly the medical conditions of the people that we are encountering out there, some of it is dire. We spend an awful lot of resources at the various hospitals that we have access to. On any given day, we may have anywhere from 5 to 10 Border Patrol agents that are performing hospital watch on individuals that are receiving secondary care that we weren't able to provide at one of our facilities. And so that's a strain on our resources. But to answer your question, if we recognize that there is a symptom or some sort of contagious disease or an ailment that requires secondary care, our first option is we're going to take them to a hospital. The medical contract that I spoke of is going to allow us to do some of that clearing at our Border Patrol facilities and eliminate having to transport people to some of these hospitals and medical care facilities, but it's not going to eliminate it. So we're going to continue to make sure that if we release somebody into the community or if we transfer them to another agency, that they have received the proper medical care.
On some of these contracts, will that include nursing staff and doctors?
Yeah, so typically what we've already done in some of the other sectors that are busier, El Paso and Rio Grande Valley, is they have physician's assistants and nurse or registered nurses that are at the facilities themselves providing some of that care and those initial screenings. Right right now, what we do is a medical evaluation to determine whether they're fit for travel or release or transfer.
What kind of diseases have y'all seen in, say, the last 6 months?
Yeah, you see a slew of diseases from scabies to chickenpox, a couple of cases of mumps. And so all of those force us to quarantine certain areas of our facilities, or if we've transferred them to another agency and it wasn't caught, it forces them to quarantine those facilities. So we're very mindful of that and the impact it could have to the general population.
Yeah, thank you.
Fernando for Legal Pass News Grant. We cover the Del Rio border sector. How are you doing, sir?
Good to see you again.
In the month of June, the U.S. Southwest border sector saw a 28% decrease, going from 140,000 to 104,000 apprehensions. In the Del Rio border sector, we did see a continued increase, including the unaccompanied alien children, which averaged at least 26 per day for the month of June. What are your thoughts, and what is being done exclusively in the Del Rio border sector to address some of the issues that we are seeing that we haven't seen in the past years?
Yeah, so, you're right. Across the board, we saw a decrease in June. And actually, this sector, we saw a little bit of a decrease in June. We were averaging over about 315 apprehensions. Right now, we're averaging 250 apprehensions a day. And so, the unaccompanied children is a very vulnerable population that we have to be concerned with. I mean, at one point, we probably had anywhere between 75 and 100 unaccompanied children in our facility that is strictly designated for that in Uvalde at our Border Patrol station there. I think yesterday I had 14 children that were waiting for placement. So we've done a much better job of coordinating with Health and Human Services, Office of Refugee Resettlement, to be able to place those children much quicker. And so we're going to continue to try and work with our Mexican counterparts because they're being exploited on that side of the river and on this side of the river. So those coordinated operations have to continue, and I think that we're in a good position. I think that what the Mexicans have done over the last several weeks has impacted and reduced the number of people that are coming across that river right now, and so hopefully they can sustain that.
Chief Flor Terrazas with Texas Public Radio News in San Antonio. I'm curious about this new asylum policy that's now requiring them to seek asylum in their initial country that they cross into. How have you all been briefed on this policy, and in terms of implementation, how do you all plan to actually implement?
Yeah, so that's another great question. And the executive order that talks about, the third country credible fear claims. And so I will tell you that there is perhaps not the level of cooperation quite yet with the government of Mexico and the Guatemalan government. As of this point, they're still working on negotiating, I think, the final pieces of that proposal. And so implementation hasn't been pushed down to the local levels. I did have a conversation with Washington, D.C. the day before yesterday because I was concerned about implementation and how it would impact us here. And I can tell you we haven't seen anything pushed down as far as here's going to be the SOP or the policy guidance for that initiative. So I do think that there perhaps could be an injunction filed as soon as it does go live. So I think we're in a holding pattern right now.
Do you know how it will affect these metering lists of those who are essentially on this wait list to try and...
Yeah, so what happens at the ports of entry doesn't really fall into my purview. I do think that it would potentially impact that population group, but I think what's more important is that we have the migrant protection protocols that has been instituted in San Diego and El Paso and is working into RGV and hopefully with an expansion into Laredo and Del Rio. What this will do will allow us to repatriate people back to Mexico to await their asylum hearing. And so unfortunately, once again, it's a capacity issue on the other side of the river that we're working on right now. And so we're going to continue to try and coordinate and collaborate with them so that way we can get that into Del Rio sector as soon as we possibly can. Because I do think that will be impactful. Yes, ma'am.
Laura Lewis with Senator. I read an article recently that Governor Abbott had sent 1,000 National Guard members down here? And if so, are they here and what is their role?
Yeah, so National Guard has participated in border security operations since I started in the Border Patrol. The Governor's Office has done a tremendous job of supporting us, not just from the National Guardsmen that they have in the various sectors in Texas, but also from several other initiatives, to include DPS, who helps us out quite a bit, as we saw in the caravan effort last year. And so the National Guardsmen that were spoken about in the press release recently haven't arrived yet. I don't know exactly how many are coming to this sector or whether they're all going to RGV. I would imagine that's going to be a priority, as well as El Paso, because those two sectors lead the southwest border in apprehensions right now.
Chief, John Tuff, San Angelo Standard-Times, part of the USA Today network. You talked about the strain that your agents are currently undergoing. What kind of hours are they having to put in the field? Do you have an idea of approximately how many overtime hours they're having to work?
Yeah, so we certainly try and monitor and try and make sure that our officers aren't stretched too far. I will tell you that on any given day, we will have between 350 and 400 officers out there on a daily basis performing the border security mission. And then we will probably have between 150 and 200 officers that are performing the processing and the stuff behind the scenes to support this humanitarian crisis that we're dealing with. And that number used to be, principally focused on the border security mission. And so we try and make sure that our agents aren't performing any more overtime than is necessary, but we really try and place them in those critical roles where we do not have the capacity to support. Transportation is one of them. Our Special Operations Detachment is stretched awfully thin because of all the heat-related rescues and the water rescues that we're having to perform right now. But overall, I think we're able to maintain a pretty good balance between a work staffing model out there that equips us enough to be able to have our zones covered as well as we possibly can be.
Can you go into any more details about what you want to see as far as a congressional fix is concerned?
Yeah, certainly when you talk about legislation, you got these push and pull factors. The loopholes, our ability to be able to detain people longer than 20 days, family units, I think would certainly diminish the desire for folks to take that trek from Central America all the way through some very dangerous territory and really putting their hands in the lives of the lives in the hands of the smugglers. And so I really would like to see that the congressional fixes are, one, close the loopholes, allow us to detain people and repatriate them if they do not warrant a benefit of credible fear or they do not have a legitimate asylum claim. And then secondly, I think we need to resource the border appropriately. We talk about the right levels of personnel, technology, and infrastructure. We need more agents. We've probably at our lowest level in the last 15 years than we've ever been as far as officer corps personnel. We need more civilian personnel to help us out, and then you certainly need more resources out there. The infrastructure, the roads, the technology, the system. It's not just a fence or a wall. It's a system that we're asking for, and I think that's going to help us provide the necessary security in between the ports of entry.
Is there a financial number on what those additions might cost?
Yeah, there is, and I know that our Border Patrol headquarters has that number. Every sector, like in this sector, I proposed about 40 miles of that system that we're talking about, as well as additional technology. And so, yeah, all of that comes, and I can get you a number later.
Can we go back to the MPP, Remain in Mexico policy? I know that in Laredo, they're starting it soon. They're just waiting for capacity. Now, are you saying that that's going to happen here soon in Acuña and Piedras Negras?
Yeah, we're working on coordinating with the governments of Mexico and the stakeholders in Acuña and Piedras Negras to be able to deploy the micro protection protocols here in this sector. Yes, we are working on that.
In the meantime, do you feel that that will drive more people to come over here?
Yes, it potentially could push people from El Paso, Laredo, RGV into Del Rio sector, and we're preparing for that.
Chief, and I didn't introduce myself. My name is Antonio with Univision, Antonio Guillen. Chief, nobody denies that the efforts and the great sacrifice that we can see in the picture that officer didn't care about his life, and he jumped with no hesitation to save that kid's life right there. Is there room in this agency for whatever happened with the Facebook chat, that, it was horrible. What can you say about that?
Yeah, so certainly the story and the rhetoric involved in the Facebook website is not indicative of this agency. I can tell you after 28 years that I couldn't be prouder of the men and women that put this uniform on each and every day. Do we have folks out there that perhaps forget about the honor and the integrity and the vigilance and all those things that are important to us? Every day. But when you talk about an organization that has 20,000 personnel, to have a handful of individuals forget what it means to represent this agency since 1924, it is a shame. And it is a bit of an embarrassment for us. But, it's something that we will overcome. It doesn't represent us. And I think that most Americans and most communities recognize the value that the Border Patrol brings to the national security mission. I think that's what's most important.
Will any disciplinary action be taken against agents who have been found?
Yeah, that process is ongoing right now, and yes, it will happen.
Were there any agents from the Del Rio sector involved?
Yes, there was. There were agents in this sector that were involved in that story, and yes, they will be disciplined appropriately.
Now, can I add one more question?
Sure.
On a daily basis, we see how your agents and you all literally risk your lives and literally put everything on the line for the uniform and for the United States of America. A few words to your agents, everything that you guys are going through, scrutiny, everything, to your agents and to the community on what it is to put on that uniform, and especially for your agents who are out there rescuing so many undocumented immigrants on a crisis that we're all experiencing and going through.
Yeah, just know that, the men and women that represent the Border Patrol, DHS, and CBP do a tremendous job out there. And they do it with very little fanfare. And so I couldn't be prouder as a chief in this sector of the great work that happens each and every day. I know the community couldn't be prouder of their efforts. And so it's those little thank yous and that little bit of support that helps them get through those tough days. And we as an organization, we're going to persevere. We're going to do tremendous things, not just for this community, but for the whole country, because we know we are at the front lines each and every day. And 24/7, we're going to continue to perform our border security mission as well as manage this humanitarian crisis as long as it's at our feet.
Chief.
You talk about having a shortage. One of the current administration was to hire 5,000 agents. That number has not been met.
Yeah.
Is there anything being done about this?
Yeah, so our attrition is a little higher than we expected, and so we continue to explore options. We are recruiting all over the country right now. We're partnering with other organizations to expand our recruitment efforts. As I mentioned, every week I'm swearing in new officers, but I'm also retiring new officers every week. And so it is a challenge for us. We got to continue to get the word out that, one, this is a great organization to be a part of, and two, that if you want to serve your country, there's no prouder outfit than the Border Patrol to serve in.
Chief, I understand that in regards to apprehensions, you, if I'm saying this correctly, work it in tiers. And being from San Angelo, which I understand is in that latter tier there, how many illegals are getting to that latter tier before they're being apprehended?
Yeah, so far this year we've had about 8,000 folks get away from us that we know of. There's also a population out there that I have no idea what that number represents. And so I am concerned about that, because when you look at the 45,000 apprehensions and then the 8,000 folks that got away from us, there could potentially be 10 or 20% that we weren't even able to get to because we were tied up with the humanitarian crisis or other efforts. And so I'm focused on that. I'm concerned about that. But I'm also confident that we've got great partnerships with the sheriff's departments, police departments in San Angelo and other communities outside of the border communities that are actually providing assistance to us on a daily basis. So do I think that number's extraordinarily high? No. But I do know that there's a number out there that I have to be able to put my arms around, and we're working towards that right now.
One of my personal concerns are the ranchers and the people that are traveling, transversing across their property. What's the danger level for, say, south of I-10, back toward the border, for the ranchers out on their property?
So that's a great question. So one of my number one priorities is going to be able to reach out to our ranchers. I've got a border community liaison program, and so in fact, I think in about a week and a half, I'm going to meet with a host of ranchers out of one of my stations, and I've asked every one of my station commanders to set up these ranch liaison meetings. So we're going to do a tremendous job of outreach, and they're going to know firsthand that if they see something, that they can call us and we will respond. We will make sure that, because we recognize that the sheriff's departments and other agencies that represent this law enforcement community out there, they're stretched off thin also. And so because we do have quite a few officers out there, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that those ranchers are safe. I'm going to take one more question and then we're going to close it. Yes, ma'am.
We keep hearing, a lot of us that are from these communities know many agents personally. You mentioned compassion yourself. We hear that you guys are changing diapers, bringing clothes from your house to give. My question is, with all the backlash from the media, why don't you let us in with our cameras to show that?
Yeah, so, you know, one, we've got certainly, because some of these facilities are family unit, we have an awful lot of families. I talked about 25,000 people that we've apprehended are family units, and those are minors. And so we've got to be very mindful of exposing them to the media in just an open forum. I'm going to make it a point to give the media as much access to our facilities and our personnel as I possibly can. We're working on a process to be able to bring you into our centralized processing center as soon as it's ready. There's a couple of other logistical things that we have to take care of before we can bring y'all in there, but we will have what we call a pen and pad and allow you access so you can see firsthand before we actually start placing anybody in these temporary facilities. So we're going to do everything we can to make it transparent as we possibly can.
About how far out time-wise?
Probably in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
That's our goal.
Okay.
One last question. I didn't, sorry, sir.
Mi nombre es Gregorio Gutierrez. I am Conexión Gregorio Conexión San Angelo. I meet many times the local organization say you make it a great job. So how important for you and your collaborators and the people working together, how important is for you to receive to the support?
Yeah, so having the community support out there is 95% of what keeps us going. You know, if y'all, the community, our stakeholders tell us that they are happy and content with the job that we're doing out there, that's the satisfaction. We live in these communities, our kids go to these schools, we go to these churches, we shop at these stores, some of us grew up in these communities, and so it's awfully important that we're invested. And it isn't just when we put the uniform on, it's when we take the uniform off and we're actually participating in these civic organizations, we're supporting youth groups, we're coaching, we're doing all those things in the community that good neighbors do. And so we're going to continue to make sure that that's a priority for us. And then the reciprocation from the community is that, hey, you guys keep doing what you're doing because we've got your back. And that's really what I think was demonstrated today and has been demonstrated since I arrived here 3 months ago. Just tremendous community support.
I'm touched about little things about to our community. The family separation, what are you doing?
Yeah, so, you know, the family separation issue that happened, you know, it impacted the organization, it impacted the whole nation. And so, you know, what we see now is they're sort of the complete opposite of that. You see, you know, unification. In fact, this sector was doing things as creatively as they possibly can, even before I arrived, to make sure that families were unified. And even though it was not a best practice, but it was the right thing to do. And so, you know, the decisions that we've made over the years to ensure that we want, take what's ever in the best interest of the children at heart in any decision that we make, and that's going to be sort of our mantra from here on out. You know, taking care of these folks that are in our custody and then getting them to the other agencies as quickly as we possibly can.
Is there DNA testing to make sure that they are connected? Because we hear the stories of, you know, rotating the children back.
So the fraud cases, and we
Yes.
talked a little bit about that. We have instituted DNA testing at our facility in Eagle
Good.
Pass, and we can't DNA test everybody, but if we suspect that there may be a child that is vulnerable to exploitation, we will DNA test, and we've already seen some confirmation that that's going to work for us.
Very
So,
good.
thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate y'all attending, taking time out of your busy days. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, we appreciate everyone coming.